When Charleston heiress Madeline Royce defies her father and secretly falls for an EMT, one heart-stopping moment at a glittering banquet forces their worlds to collide. Will love survive the fallout? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the Royce family mansion, casting a golden glow across the marble floors. Madeline Royce sat at the breakfast table, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her posture straight as a board. Years of her father's strict rules had made good posture second nature. "Don't forget the charity committee meeting at noon," Harold Royce said without looking up from his newspaper. At 62, he still commanded every room he entered. His silver hair and tailored suits were as much his trademark as the family name that adorned buildings throughout Charleston. "I won't forget, Daddy," Madeline said, taking a small sip of her orange juice. At 26, she still lived at home, still followed her father's rules, still played the part of the perfect Southern daughter. "And the Prestons will be joining us for dinner on Friday. Their son Thomas is back from law school," Harold added, finally looking up at his daughter with meaning in his eyes. Madeline nodded, knowing exactly what that look meant. Thomas Preston was exactly the kind of M and her father approved of. White, wealthy, from a good family. The kind of man she was expected to marry someday. "I've made plans for Friday," she said quietly, her heart beating faster. Harold's eyebrows shot up. What plans could possibly be more important than dinner with the Prestons? "I promised Caroline I'd help with her charity auction," Madeline lied. She hated lying to her father, but lately it had become necessary. Harold sighed. "Fine, but Mark is sure you're free next week. Thomas will be in town for 2 weeks. "Yes, Daddy," Madeline replied automatically, the words she'd been saying her entire life. After breakfast, Madeline drove her white Mercedes convertible downtown. But instead of heading to the country club or the boutiques where she usually spent her time, she parked near the city hospital. Her heart raced as she checked her appearance in the rearview mirror, not for vanity's sake, but rom nervousness. She walked quickly into the coffee shop across from the hospital, her eyes scanning the tables until she found him. Elijah Brooks sat in the corner booth, still wearing his EMT uniform after his night shift. His dark skin contrasted with the light blue of his uniform. When he saw Madeline, his serious expression broke into a warm smile that made her heart skip. "You made it," he said, as she slid into the booth across from him. "Sorry I'm late." "Breakfast with my father always runs long," she said, her voice automatically dropping even though there was no chance her father or any of his friends would be in this simple coffee shop. "How is the great Harold Royce this morning?" Elijah asked with a small smile. "The same, trying to set me up with Thomas Preston." Elijah's smile faltered slightly. "Another suitable candidate, I assume." Madeline reached across the table and took his hand. "Let's not talk about that. How was your shift?" "Busy, car accident on the highway. Everyone's okay though." His thumb rubbed small circles on the back of her hand. "I missed you." They had met 3 months ago when Madeline was volunteering at a hospital fundraiser. Elijah had been working, but they'd ended up talking during his break. She'd been drawn to his quiet confidence, how he listened when she spoke, really listened, not just waited for his turn to tie LK. He didn't care about her family name or her father's money. He saw her. "I want to see you tonight," Elijah said, interrupting her thoughts. "I can't. There's a banquet at the estate. Some business thing for Daddy." "After." His dark eyes held hers. "It'll go late." She hesitated. "I'll wait. I get off at 10. I could meet you at our spot at 11? Their spot was a quiet park bench overlooking the harbor, far from the exclusive neighborhoods where someone might recognize Madeline Royce. "Okay," she agreed, her chest tight with conflicting emotions. Happiness at seeing him again, fear of being discovered, guilt at the secrecy. Later that afternoon, as Madeline was getting ready for the banquet, her phone chimed with a text from Elijah. "I think it's time," the message read. Her heart sank. She knew what he wanted without him having to say more. They'd been having the same conversation for weeks now. He called him immediately. "I can't meet your family," she said when he answered, skipping hello. "You know I can't." "Why not?" His voice was steady, but she could hear the hurt beneath it. "Are you ashamed of me, Madeline?" "No, of course not." she insisted, pacing her bedroom. But my father, he wouldn't understand. He's from a different generation. So am I just supposed to be your secret forever? The pain in his voice was unmistakable now. No, it's not like that. I just need more time. It's been 3 months, Madeline. I love you. I want to be part of your whole life, not just the hidden parts. Tears welled in her eyes. My father would never approve of you, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Elijah, I didn't mean... Yes, you did, he cut her off, his voice suddenly distant. I get it now. I'm good enough to love in secret. But no, good enough to bring home. That's not fair, isn't it? Would you be hiding me if I was white, if I came from money? Madeline couldn't answer. The truth was too painful to admit, even to herself. I love you, Madeline, but I won't be your dirty little secret anymore. Either I'm part of your whole life or I'm not part of it at all. Please, just give me more time, she begged. I've given you time. What I need now is courage. Your courage. His voice softened. I'll be driving by your place tonight one last time. If you want me in your life, your whole life, come out and tell me. Otherwise, goodbye, Madeline. He hung up before she could respond. Madeline sat on her bed, mascara-stained tears running down her cheeks. She loved Elijah more than she'd ever loved anyone. But bringing him home to meet her father? Harold Royce had never said anything overtly racist, but she knew his views. The way he talked about those people moving into good neighborhoods, the way he only hired certain kinds of people at his executive level. Her father had given her everything. This home, her education, her place in society. How could she defy him so completely? By 7 o'clock, Madeline had reapplied her makeup and put on the navy blue cocktail dress her father had complimented before. No one looking at her would guess she'd been crying an hour earlier. The banquet W was in full swing by 8. The Royce Estates Grand Ballroom was filled with Charleston's elite, businessmen, politicians, old money families. Everyone who was anyone was there, laughing, drinking, and making deals disguised as small talk. Madeline played her part perfectly, smiling, charming, the perfect hostess helping her father. But her mind kept drifting to Elijah. Was he outside now, waiting for her? Or had he already given up on her? At 9:30, Harold Royce tapped a knife against his crystal glass, gathering everyone's attention for his customary speech. Madeline stood nearby, the dutiful daughter. Her father looked impressive in his tuxedo, commanding the room with his presence. Friends, colleagues, distinguished guests, he began. Thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate another record year at Royce Industries. The crowd applauded. Harold smiled broadly, continuing his speech about Profi, teas and expansions. Madeline had heard it all before. Her eyes drifted to the large windows overlooking the driveway. Was that Elijah's car pulling up? Her attention snapped back to her father when his voice suddenly faltered. Harold reached up to loosen his tie, his face contorting. As I was saying... He struggled to get the words out, sweat beading on his forehead. Then it happened. Harold Royce clutched his chest, gasping for air. His glass fell from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. "Daddy!" Madeline screamed, rushing to his side as he collapsed. Chaos erupted in the ballroom. People shouted for help, for a doctor, for an ambulance. Harold was on the floor now, his face grey, struggling to breathe. "Call 911, someone shouted. "I already did," another voice responded. Madeline knelt beside her father, terrified. "Daddy, please, stay with me." Suddenly the crowd parted and someone rushed for Roward. Madeline looked up through her tears to see Elijah, still in his EMT uniform, dropping to his knees beside her father. "Elijah!" she gasped. "I was outside," he said quickly, already checking Harold's pulse and airway. "Move back, give him space." With practiced efficiency, Elijah loosened Harold's tie and collar, checked his breathing. "He's having a heart attack," Elijah announced, his voice calm and authoritative. "I need to start CPR. Everyone be back." The crowd retreated, watching in stunned silence as Elijah began chest compressions on Harold Royce. Madeline stood frozen, watching the man she loved try to save her father's life. "Come on, Mr. Royce," Elijah muttered as he worked. "Stay with us." Minutes that felt like hours passed. Finally, the wail of sirens cut through the night, and paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and equipment. Elijah immediately began updating them on Harold's Conditio N, using medical terms Madeline didn't understand. As they loaded her father onto the stretcher, Elijah stepped back, his eyes meeting Madeline's. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the crowded ballroom. Then the paramedics were asking questions, and the moment broke. "I'll ride with him," Madeline told the paramedics, following them out. At the door, she paused and looked back. Elijah stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by Charleston's elite, yet completely apart from them. Their eyes met one last time before Madeline turned and ran after the stretcher carrying her father. The hospital waiting room was cold and sterile, nothing like the warm, luxurious rooms of the Royce mansion. Madeline sat alone, her navy dress now wrinkled, her perfect hair falling loose. She'd been there for hours, waiting for news about her father. The doctor had already told her that Elijah's quick action had likely saved Harold's life. If CPR hadn't been started immediately, the outcome could have been much worse. Elijah had saved her father. The thought kept circling in her mind. After what she'd said to him, after she'd been too afraid to acknowledge him publicly, he had still rushed in to help. "Miss Royce?" Madeline looked up to see a nurse standing before her. "Your father is stable now. You can see him if you'd like." Harold Royce looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. His skin was pale, his silver hair flat against the pillow. Madeline had never seen her father look vulnerable before. "Daddy?" she whispered, taking his hand. Harold's eyes fluttered open. "Madeline?" he said, his voice weak. "What happened?" "You had a heart attack," she explained gently. "During your speech." Harold closed his eyes briefly. "I remember feeling pain, then nothing." "You're going to be okay," Madeline assured him, squeezing his hand. "The doctor said you were lucky." "Lucky," Harold repeated. Then his brow furrowed. "There was someone at the banquet, a young man. He helped me." Madeline swallowed hard. "Yes, his name is Elijah Brooks. He's an EMT. He saved your life, Daddy." Harold was quiet for a moment. "I'd like to thank him." "You will," Madeline said, making a decision. "I'll make sure of it." After her father drifted back to sleep, Madeline stepped out into the hallway and took out her phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed Elijah's number. Would he even answer after what she'd said? He picked up on the second ring. "Madeline, how is your father?" The concern in his voice made her throat tight. "He's stable. The doctors say he'll recover." "That's good news." "You saved his life," she said. "Even after what I said to you, you still came and saved him." "I'm an EMT, Madeline. It's what I do. I couldn't just drive away knowing someone needed help." "But it wasn't just someone. It was my father." Silence stretched between them. "Thank you," she finally said. "Daddy wants to thank you too." "He doesn't need to thank me." "Elijah." She took a deep breath. "I was wrong. What I said earlier, about my father not approving of you, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter. I love you and I'm sorry I was too afraid to stand by you." "Madeline, no, let me finish. Seeing you tonight, watching you save my father's life, I've never been more proud to know someone, and I've never been more ashamed of myself for hiding you away." Tears streamed down her face now. "If you can forgive me, I promise I'll never hide how I feel about you again." The line was quiet for so long that Madeline feared he'd hung up. "I'll be at the hospital in 20 minutes, Elijah finally said. "We can talk then." After they hung up, Madeline leaned against the wall, her heart pounding. She had no idea what would happen when Elijah arrived, or what would happen when her father learned the truth about them. All she knew was that she couldn't keep living a lie. Life was too precious, too fragile. Her father's heart attack had shown her that. Whatever came next, she would face it honestly. No more hiding, no more shame, no more fear. 20 minutes later, Madeline sat in the hospital cafeteria, a cold cup of coffee in front of her. When Elijah walked in, still in his uniform, her heart skipped. He hesitated at the doorway, then walked over and sat across from her. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better now," she admitted, "now that you're here." Elijah reached across the table and took her hand, just as he had that morning in the coffee shop. I meant what I said, Madeline. I love you, but I can't be your secret anymore. I know, she said, and I don't want you to be. I was scared, Elijah. Scared of disappointing my father. Scared of what people would say. But tonight, when I thought I might lose him, she squeezed his hand. Life's too short for fear. What happens now? He asked. Madeline took a deep breath. Now I introduce you to my father, not just as the man who saved his life, but as the man I love. Elijah's eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, she said. It won't be easy. My father, he's set in his ways. But seeing you tonight might have changed something in him, and even if it hasn't, it's changed something in me. Elijah smiled then, the same warm smile that had first captured her heart. Then let's go see your father. As they walked hand in hand toward Harold Royce's hospital room, Madeline knew this was just the beginning. There would be more battles ahead, more prejudices to face, but for the first time in her life she was walking her own path, not the one laid out for her by her father or society. That night had changed everything, and maybe, just maybe, it had changed things for the better. Outside Harold Royce's hospital room, Madeline squeezed Elijah's hand one last time before letting go. Let me talk to him first, she said. Elijah nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll wait right here. Madeline took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Her father was awake now, looking stronger than he had earlier. The color had returned to his face. Madeline, Harold smiled weakly. I was wondering where you'd gone. I was making a phone call, she said, sitting in the chair beside his bed. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, Harold admitted, but the doctor says I'm lucky. If that young man hadn't been there. He shook his head. Did you find out who he was? Madeline's heart pounded. Yes, Daddy. His name is Elijah Brooks. He's an EMT. Brooks, Harold repeated. Not a name I recognize. Is his family from Charleston? No, Madeline said, gathering her courage. Daddy, there's something I need to tell you about Elijah. Harold raised an eyebrow. What is it? He wasn't at the banquet by accident. She twisted her hands in her lap. He was there because of M.E. I don't understand. Elijah and I have been seeing each other, Madeline said, the words coming out in a rush. For 3 months now. Harold's expression hardened. Seeing each other? What does that mean exactly? We're dating, Daddy. I love him. Harold's blood pressure monitor began beeping faster. You're dating an EMT, a man I've never met, a man who wasn't even invited to our home. Yes, Madeline said quietly, and there's more. Elijah is here now. He wants to meet you properly. Harold's face flushed. You brought him here. Now. He saved your life, Madeline reminded him, and he's important to me. Please, just meet him. Before Harold could respond, there was a knock at the door. A nurse poked her head in. Everything okay in here? Mr. Royce, your heart rate is elevated. I'm fine, Harold said curtly. Just a little family discussion. The nurse looked doubtful but nodded. Try to stay calm, Mr. Royce. Doctor's orders. After she left, Harold closed his eyes briefly. Fine, he said finally. Bring him in. I should thank him anyway. Madeline went to the door and motioned to Elijah. He walked in, his posture straight, his face composed but nervous. Mr. Royce, Elijah said, stepping forward. I'm Elijah Brooks. It's good to see you looking better. Harold studied Elijah with sharp eyes, taking in his dark skin, his EMT uniform, his confident stance. Mr. Brooks, he said finally, I understand I owe you my life. Anyone would have done the same, Elijah said modestly. Not anyone, Harold contered. Not everyone knows CPR or how to handle a heart attack victim. He paused. My daughter tells me you two are involved. Elijah glanced at Madeline, then back to Harold. Yes, sir, I care very deeply for your daughter. Harold's jaw tightened. And why exactly were you at my home tonight, Mr. Brooks? I don't recall seeing your name on the guest list. Daddy, Madeline started, but Elijah touched her arm gently. It's all right, he said to her. Then to Harold, I wasn't invited, Mr. Royce. I was there to see Madeline. We'd had an argument earlier, and I wanted to make things right. An argument about what? Harold demanded. Elijah met his gaze steadily. About the fact that she wouldn't introduce me to you. The room fell silent. Harold looked from Elijah to Madeline, his expression unreadable. I see, he said finally. And why did you think that was, Mr. Brooks? Daddy, please, Madeline interrupted. This isn't the time. No, Madeline, Elijah said. Your father deserves honesty. He turned back to Harold. I think Madeline was afraid you wouldn't approve of me because I'm black and because I'm not from your social circle. Harold's face reddened. That's quite an accusation to make about a man you've never met. It's not an accusation, sir, Elijah said calmly. It's what Madeline feared. Whether that fear was justified is something only you can answer. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Madeline held her breath, looking between the two men in her life. Finally, Harold spoke. I think I need to rest now. It's been a long night. Of course, Madeline said quickly. We'll go. I'll be back in the morning. Madeline, Harold called as they turned to leave. You should go home and get some rest. I'm sure the staff can manage without you for one day. The dismissal was clear. Madeline nodded stiffly. Good night, Daddy. Outside the hospital room, Madeline's composure crumbled. That was terrible, she whispered. Elijah put his arm around her shoulders. It could have been worse. How? He practically threw us out. He didn't forbid you from seeing me, Elijah pointed out. He didn't make a scene, and he's just had a heart attack. He needs time to process everything. Madeline leaned against him, drawing strength from H's calm presence. What do we do now? Now I take you home, Elijah said. You need rest too. In the hospital parking lot, Madeline hesitated. I can't go back to the estate, not tonight. Too many questions, too many people. You can stay at my place, Elijah offered. I've got a spare room. Madeline nodded gratefully. She was too exhausted to think about what this meant. Staying at Elijah's apartment, the whispers that would follow, the lines being cursed. All she knew was that she couldn't face the empty mansion or the curious staff tonight. Elijah's apartment was on the east side of Charleston, in a modest building far from the historic district where the Royces and their social circle lived. It was small, but neat, with simple furniture and books everywhere. Sorry, it's not what you're used to, Elijah said as he showed her the spare bedroom. It's perfect, Madeline said sincerely. For the first to me in hours, she felt like she could breathe. Thank you. There are towels in the bathroom, and I can lend you a t-shirt to sleep in, Elijah said. Are you hungry? I can make something. Madeline shook her head. Just tired. Try to get some sleep, Elijah said softly. Things will look better in the morning. But Madeline doubted that. As she lay in the unfamiliar bed, wearing Elijah's too big t-shirt, she couldn't stop replaying the scene in the hospital room. Her father's face when he realized Elijah was black, the coldness in his voice, the abrupt dismissal. She had known it would be hard, but seeing the reality of her father's reaction was still painful. Harold Royce might be grateful that Elijah had saved his life, but that gratitude clearly didn't extend to accepting him as Madeline's boyfriend. Morning came too soon. Madeline woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet movement in the kitchen. For a moment, she was disoriented, the simple room a stark contrast to her luxurious bedroom at the estate. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. Her father's heart attack, the confrontation in the hospital room, spending the night at Elijah's apartment. She checked her phone. Dozens of missed calls and text messages from friends, family friends, her father's business associates. News of Harold Royce's heart attack had spread quickly through their social circle. There was also a text from Caroline, her closest friend. Where are you? Everyone's looking for you at the estate. Your father's assistant is going crazy. Madeline sighed and typed a quick response. I'm safe. We'll explain later. She found Elijah in the kitchen, making breakfast. He'd changed out of his uniform into jeans and a plain blue t-shirt that hugged his broad shoulders. He looked up when she entered, his face aching into a smile that made her heart skip. Morning, he said. Coffee? Please, she replied, sitting at the small kitchen table. I need to go to the hospital soon. Elijah nodded, pouring her a mug of coffee. I figured. Eggs and toast okay for breakfast? Perfect. They ate in comfortable silence. Madeline realized how rare this was. A quiet morning, just the two of them. No sneaking around, no looking over their shoulders. Despite everything that had happened, this moment felt right. "What are you thinking?" Elijah asked, noticing her expression. "That I like this," she admitted. "Being here with you, not hiding." Elijah reached across the table and took her hand. "This is how it could be, Madeline. Every day." The simple statement hung in the air between them, full of promise and challenge. Before Madeline could respond, her phone rang. The hospital's number flashed on the screen. "Hello?" she answered, her heart racing. "Miss Royce, this is Dr. Reynolds. Your father is asking for you." "Is he okay?" Madeline asked, alarmed. "He's stable, but quite insistent on seeing you. Can you come in?" "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Madeline promised, ending the call. She looked at Elijah. "I have to go." "I'll drive you," he offered immediately. Madeline hesitated. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. If Daddy's asking for me." "You think he doesn't want to see me?" Elijah finished for her. "I don't know what he wants," Madeline admitted. "But after last night..." Elijah's face showed disappointment, but he nodded. "I understand. I'll call you a cab." Guilt twisted in Madeline's stomach. After everything she'd promised last night about not hiding anymore, here she was, already separating Elijah from her life with her father. "No," she said firmly. "I want you to come with me." Elijah looked surprised. "Are you sure? Your father might not be ready for that." "I'm sure," Madeline said, making up her mind. "This is who I am now, Elijah. I'm not going to compartmentalize my life anymore. You here, my father there. If he wants to see me, he gets all of me, including the man I love." Elijah's smile was worth any disapproval her father might show. "Then let's go see your father." Harold Royce looked better than he had the night before, sitting up in bed and scowling at a hospital breakfast tray. When the door opened and Madeline walked in with Elijah right behind her, his scowl deepened. "I asked to see my daughter," he said pointedly. "And here I am," Madeline replied, stepping further into the room. She reached back and took Elijah's hand, drawing him forward. "With Elijah." Harold's eyes narrowed at their joined hands. "I see." "How are you feeling, Daddy?" Madeline asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Like a man who's just had a heart attack," Harold replied dryly. "The doctor says I'll need to stay here for a few more days, then take it easy for weeks." He looked at Elijah. "No offense, young man, but I'd like to speak to my daughter alone." "Daddy..." Madeline started to protest, but Elijah squeezed her hand. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I'll wait outside." After Elijah left, closing the door behind him, Harold fixed his daughter with a hard stare. "Where were you last night? The staff said you never came home." "I stayed at Elijah's," Madeline admitted. There was no point in lying. Harold's face darkened. "Do you have any idea what people will say when they find out?" "I don't care what people say," Madeline replied, surprising herself with her firmness. "Well, I do," Harold snapped. "The Royce name means something in this town, Madeline. It opens doors, creates opportunities, secures your future." "And dating Elijah ruins all that?" Madeline challenged. Harold sighed heavily. "Sit down, Madeline." She perched on the edge of the chair beside his bed, bracing herself. "I'm not blind to what Mr. Brooks did for me last night," Harold began. "I owe him my life, and I'm grateful. But gratitude doesn't change reality." "What reality is that?" Madeline asked quietly. "The reality that you come from different worlds, the reality that people will talk, doors will close, invitations will stop coming, the reality that your life will be harder, not easier, with him in it." Madeline felt tears stinging her eyes. "So that's it? You'd rather I be unhappy but accepted by your country club friends than happy with someone who truly loves me?" "Don't be dramatic," Harold said dismissively. "You hardly know this man. 3 months is nothing." "I know enough," Madeline insisted. "I know he's kind and brave and honest. I know he makes me laugh and makes me feel seen for who I really am, not just as Harold Royce's daughter. I know he came back for me even after I hurt him." Harold was quiet for a moment, studying his daughter's face. You really do care for him, he said finally, sounding surprised. I love him, Daddy, Madeline said simply. Harold closed his eyes briefly. Madeline, I want what's best for you. I always have. Then trust me to know what that is, she pleaded. Before H. Harold could respond, there was a knock at the door, and a nurse entered with medication. The moment was broken. I should go, Madeline said, standing. You need to rest, I'll come back later. Harold caught her hand. Madeline, he said, his voice softer now, I'm not saying never, I'm just saying give me time. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. Madeline nodded, a small spark of hope kindling in her chest. I can do that. Outside, in the hallway, Elijah was waiting, leaning against the wall. He straightened when he saw her. How did it go? Better than I expected, Madeline admitted. He asked for time. Elijah nodded slowly. Time I can work with. As they walked through the hospital corridors, Madeline was acutely aware of the stares they attracted. Charleston was still a traditional southern city, and interracial couples weren't common, especially not in the circles Madeline Trav eeled in. People are staring, she murmured. Does it bother you? Elijah asked, watching her face. Madeline considered the question. Yesterday it would have bothered her enormously. Today, after nearly losing her father, after finally being honest about her feelings for Elijah, the stares seemed trivial. No, she said firmly, and reached for his hand. She laced her fingers through his, holding tight. Elijah's smile was like the sun breaking through Clue. So that's my girl. In the hospital lobby, they ran into Caroline, Madeline's closest friend since childhood. Caroline's eyes widened as she took in their joined hands. Madeline, there you are. Everyone's been looking for you, Caroline exclaimed, her gaze flickering curiously to Elijah. Caroline, this is Elijah Brooks, Madeline said, standing tall. Elijah, this is my friend, Caroline Preston. Preston? Elijah repeated. Any relation to Thomas Preston? My brother, Caroline confirmed, looking confused. How do you... Daddy mentioned him, Madeline explained quickly. Caroline, did you come to see my father? Yes, Mama and I brought some things from home for him. Caroline was still staring at their joined hands. Madeline, can I talk to you for a second? Alone? Madeline sighed. Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of Elijah. Caroline looked uncomfortable. It's just, people are talking, Maddie, about you disappearing last night and about, well, about him. She nodded toward Elijah. They're saying he crashed the banquet, and that's why your father had the heart attack. Anger flared in Madeline's chest. That's ridiculous. Elijah saved my father's life. I know, Caroline said quickly. I'm just telling you what people are saying. Let them talk, Madeline said dismissively. I don't care. Caroline looked shocked. Madeline Royce had always cared about what people thought, always followed the rules, always maintained appearances. Maddie, what's gotten into you? Nothing, Madeline replied. I've just realized what's really important. She squeezed Elijah's hand. Who's really important? Caroline's expression softened. So you really like him, don't you? I love him, Madeline corrected, and I'm not hiding it anymore. Caroline looked from Madeline to Elijah, then back again. Whatever she saw in her friend's face must have convinced her, because she smiled slightly. Well then, she said, offering her hand to Elijah. It's nice to meet you, Elijah. Properly, I mean. Elijah shook her hand, his relief visible. Nice to meet you too, Caroline. It was a small moment, but it felt like a victory. If Caroline, born and bred in the same exclusive social circle as Madeline, could accept Elijah, maybe others could too. Maybe, just maybe, her father would come around eventually. As they left the hospital, Madeline's phone chimed with a text message. It was from her father's assistant, Robert. Need to discuss business matters. Your father asked me to speak with you. Can you come to the office today? Madeline frowned. Her father had never involved her in the business before. Why start now, when he was in the hospital? Everything okay? Elijah asked, noticing her expression. I don't know, Madeline said honestly. Daddy's assistant wants to meet with me about business matters. Do you want me to come with you? Madeline considered it. On one hand, she wanted Elijah by her side. On the other, this was about Royce Industries' business, something she'd never been involved in before. "I think I should go alone," she decided reluctantly. "But can we meet later, maybe dinner?" "Dinner sounds perfect," Elijah agreed, kissing her cheek. "Just call me when you're done." The Royce Industries headquarters took up half a block in downtown Charleston, a modern glass building that stood out among the historic architecture. Madeline had rarely visited, having no role in her father's business empire. Robert Simmons, her father's executive assistant for the past 20 years, met her in the lobby. His usual polite smile seemed strained today. "Madeline, thank you for coming," he said, leading her to the elevator. "How is your father doing?" "Better," Madeline replied. "What's this about, Robert? Daddy's never wanted me involved in the business before." Robert waited until they were alone in the elevator before responding. "Your father asked me to brief you on certain matters, given his condition. He thinks it's time you understood more about the family business." The elevator doors opened directly into Harold's executive suite on the top floor. R. Aubert led Madeline to her father's office, an imposing room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charleston harbor. As she entered, Madeline was surprised to see Jonathan Myers, her father's lawyer, and William Preston, Caroline's father, and her father's oldest friend, already waiting. "Madeline, dear," William stood to greet her. "How's Harold doing?" "He's recovering," Madeline said, suddenly wary. "What's going on here?" The three men exchanged glances. Finally, Robert spoke. "Your father has asked us to discuss certain contingency plans with you in light of his health crisis." "Contingency plans?" Madeline repeated, taking a seat across from them. Jonathan Myers cleared his throat. "In the event that your father is incapacitated for an extended period, there are decisions that would need to be made regarding the business." "Daddy's going to be fine," Madeline said automatically. "Of course he is," William said smoothly. "But it's always good to be prepared. Your father has named the three of us as temporary trustees for his business interests while he recovers." Madeline frowned. "And why am I here?" "Because you're Harold's only heir," Robert explained. "He wanted you to be informed of the decisions being made on his behalf." "Informed but not involved," Madeline noted, a familiar disappointment settling in her chest. All her life, her fat hair had kept her at arm's length from the business, seeing her as too delicate or too disinterested to be part of his world. "Your father has always wanted to protect you from the harsher realities of business," William said patronizingly. Madeline bit back a sharp retort. These men had known her since childhood and still saw her as a little girl, not a grown woman capable of making her own decisions, in business or in love. "What decisions are being made?" she asked instead. Robert slid a folder across the desk. "Just some routine matters, a few contracts that need signing, some ongoing negotiations." Madeline opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. Most of it was technical business language she didn't fully understand. But one document caught her eye, a memo about staff restructuring at St. Luke's Hospital. "What's this about St. Luke's?" she asked, pulling out the memo. "Why is Royce Industries involved with the hospital?" The three men exchanged another look. "Your father's company has been a major donor to St. Luke's for years," Jonathan explained. "The Royce wing of the hospital is named after your grandfather." "I know that," Madeline said impatiently. "But this memo talks about staff changes. What does that have to do with Daddy's donations?" William cleared his throat. "As a major benefactor, your father has certain influence over hospital policy and staffing decisions. It's quite common in philanthropic relationships." A cold feeling settled in Madeline's stomach. "What staff changes are being proposed?" Robert reached for the memo. "Nothing you need to worry about, Madeline. Just routine." "What staff changes?" Madeline repeated, holding the memo out of his reach. William sighed. "If you must know, there have been some complaints about certain members of the emergency medical staff. Your father was considering suggesting some personnel changes." "What emergency medical staff?" Madeline demanded, though she already knew the answer. "Who specifically?" The three men were silent. "Elijah Brooks," Madeline said, her voice hard. "You're trying to get Elijah fired, aren't you?" "Madeline, You don't understand the complexities, William began. I understand perfectly, Madeline cut him off, her anger rising. My father couldn't forbid me from seeing Elijah directly, so he's using his influence to pressure him another way. This has nothing to do with your friendship with Mr. Brooks, Jonathan insisted. Doesn't it? Madeline stood, clutching the memo. This is dated today, after Daddy found out about us, after Elijah saved his life. Madeline, please, Robert tried to placate her. Your father only wants what's best for you, for the family name. No, Madeline interrupted. He wants control, he always has. She stuffed the memo into her purse. I'm going to see my father. Madeline, he needs rest, William protested. This business matter can wait. This isn't business, Madeline said coldly. This is personal, and it can't wait at all. She'd earned and walked out, ignoring their calls after her. In the elevator, her hands shook with anger. How dare they? How dare her father use his money and influence to punish Elijah, the very man who had saved his life? Outside the building, Madeline pulled out her phone and called Elijah. Madeline, he answered on the first ring. How did the meeting go? Not now, she said tersely. Meet me at the hospital. I need to confront my father, and I want you there with me. What happened? Elijah asked, concerned. I'll explain when I see you, Madeline promised. Just meet me there in 20 minutes. As she hung up, Madeline realized something had changed inside her. For the first time in her life, she was truly angry with her father, not the fleeting frustration she'd felt when he'd been overprotective or controlling in the past, but a deep, burning anger at his manipulation and prejudice. The perfect, obedient daughter was gone. In her place stood a woman ready to fight for what and who she loved. Madeline paced outside the hospital entrance, waiting for Elijah. The memo in her purse felt like it was burning a hole through the expensive leather. How could her father do this, after Elijah had saved his life? When Elijah's car pulled up, Madeline felt a wave of relief. Just seeing him calmed her racing heart. He stepped out of the car, concern written across his face. Madeline, what's going on? He asked, reaching for her hands. She pulled the memo from her purse and handed it to him. They're trying to get you fired. Elijah frowned as he read the document. Who gave you this? My father's business associates. They called me to a meeting at Royce Industries today. I think they were trying to distract me with business talk, but I found this memo. Madeline's voice shook with anger. My father is using his influence as a hospital donor to suggest staff changes in the emergency department. Your name is right there. Elijah's expression hardened as he read. I see. I'm so sorry, Elijah. This is all because of me, because of us. Elijah folded the memo carefully and handed it back to her. No, Madeline, this isn't because of you. This is because of your father's prejudice. I'm going to confront him, Madeline said firmly, right now, and I want you with me. Elijah hesitated. Are you sure that's a good idea? He's still recovering from a heart attack. I'll be calm, Madeline promised, but I need to make it clear that I won't let him do this. Not to you, not to us. Elijah nodded slowly. Okay, I'm with you. Together they walked into the hospital. Madeline noticed the stares and whispers from the staff, but kept her head high. Let them talk. She was done hiding. At Harold's room, they found a nurse checking his vital signs. Harold looked up as they entered, his expression darkening when he saw Elijah. Madeline, he said curtly, Mr. Brooks. How are you feeling, Mr. Royce? Elijah asked politely. Better, Harold replied. Nurse, we'd like some privacy, please. After the nurse left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Madeline broke it by pulling out the memo and placing it on Harold's bed tray. What is this? She demanded. Harold glanced at the document, then back at his daughter. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is what it says. You're trying to get Elijah fired. Harold sighed. Madeline, you don't understand the complexities of business relationships. Don't patronize me, Madeline snapped. This has nothing to do with business. This is about you trying to control my life. I'm trying to protect you, Harold insisted. From what? From who? From the man who saved your life? Madeline's voice rose despite her promise to remain calm. Madeline, Elijah touched her arm gently. "Let me." He turned to Harold. "Mr. Royce, I understand your concerns about your daughter. You want what's best for her, but trying to get me fired won't change how we feel about each other." Harold's jaw tightened. "Mr. Brooks, I appreciate what you did for me, but that doesn't give you the right to pursue my daughter." "Pursue me?" Madeline interrupted. "Daddy, I'm not some prize to be won. I'm a grown woman who makes her own choices, and I choose Elijah." "You don't know what you're choosing," Harold argued. "You've lived a privileged life, Madeline. You have no idea what kind of challenges you'd face with someone like Mr. Brooks." "Someone like me," Elijah repeated, his voice level but with an edge. "You mean someone black? Someone who works for a living instead of inheriting wealth?" Harold had the GR ace to look uncomfortable. "I mean someone from a different world than ours." "Different worlds can come together," Elijah said quietly. "It happens every day." "Not in my family," Harold said firmly. Madeline felt tears of frustration burning her eyes. "So that's it? You'd rather destroy Elijah's career than see me happy with him?" "I'd rather see you with someone who can give you the life you deserve," Harold replied. "And you get to decide what I deserve, Madeline challenged. "What about what I want?" Harold looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "What do you want, Madeline?" "I want Elijah," she said simply. "I want a life where I make my own choices, not just follow the path you've laid out for me. I want to be with someone who sees me for who I really am, not just as Harold Royce's daughter." Harold was quiet for a long moment. "And if I can't accept that?" Madeline took a deep breath. "Then you'll lose me, Daddy." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Harold looked shocked, as if it had never occurred to him that his daughter might choose someone else over him. "You don't mean that," he said finally. "I do," Madeline replied, her voice steady despite the tears now streaming down her face. "I love you, Daddy. You're my father, and nothing will change that. But I won't let you destroy what Elijah and I have. If you make me choose, I'll choose him." Harold's face paled. "You'd choose this man you've known for 3 months over your own family?" "I'm not choosing him over family," Madeline corrected. "I'm choosing love over prejudice, happiness over tradition, my life over yours." Elijah, who had been silent, watching the exchange between father and daughter, now spoke. "Mr. Royce, may I say something?" Harold looked at him warily but nodded. "I love your daughter," Elijah said simply. "I never expected to fall in love with Madeline Royce. Our worlds are different, as you said. But from the moment I met her, I knew there was something special about her. Not her name, not her wealth, but her heart, her kindness, her spirit." Madeline felt a fresh wave of tears at his words. "I know you're afraid for her," Elijah continued. "Afraid of how people will look at us, what they'll say. Afraid that her life will be harder because of me. And maybe you're right about that. But shouldn't the choice be hers? Shouldn't she be the one to decide if I'm worth the challenges we might face?" Harold was silent, his expression unreadable. "I promise you this," Elijah said. "I will never hurt your daughter. I will never let anyone make her feel less because of our relationship, and I will spend every day proving that her choice, if she chooses me, was the right one." The fell silent again. Madeline held her breath, watching her father's face for any sign of softening. Finally, Harold spoke. "The memo will be withdrawn," he said gruffly. "Your job is safe, Mr. Brooks." Relief flooded through Madeline. "Thank you, Daddy." "Don't thank me yet," Harold warned. "I'm not saying I approve of this relationship. I'm just saying I won't actively try to stop it. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. Madeline would take it. That's all we're asking for right now," she said. "Time, a chance." Harold nodded stiffly. "I need to rest now. The doctor says too much excitement isn't good for my recovery." Madeline leaned down and kissed his cheek. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised. As they left the hospital room, Madeline felt lighter than she had in days. She slipped her hand into Elijah's, squeezing tightly. "That went better than I expected," she admitted. Elijah smiled. "Your father is a stubborn man, but he loves you. That much is clear. Not as stubborn as his daughter, Madeline said with a small laugh. I've never stood up to him like that before. You were amazing, Elijah said, pulling her close. I'm proud of you. In the hospital corridor, Madeline didn't care who was watching as she leaned up and kissed Elijah softly. Take me home. Your place or mine, he asked. Madeline hesitated. The estate, I need to face the staff the questions, no more hiding, remember? Elijah nodded, admiration in his eyes. No more hiding. The drive to the Royce estate was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled through the ornate gates, Madeline felt a flutter of nervousness. This was Elijah's first time coming to her home as her guest, not sneaking around to see her. The mansion looked as imposing as ever, its white columns gleaming in the afternoon sun. Viral staff members were visible, attending to the grounds or the house itself. All activity stopped as Elijah's car pulled up the circular driveway. Quite a place, Elijah murmured, taking in the estate's grandeur. It's just a house, Madeline said, though they both knew it was much more than that. It was a symbol of everything that stood between them: wealth, privilege, tradition. As they got out of the car, Martha, the housekeeper who had worked for the Royces since Madeline was a child, appeared at the front door. Miss Madeline, she said, her eyes darting curiously to Elijah. We've been worried about you. I'm fine, Martha, Madeline assured her. She took Elijah's hand. This is Elijah Brooks. He'll be joining me for dinner. Martha's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. Of course, miss. I'll inform the kitchen. Inside the mansion, Madeline gave Elijah a brief tour. She watched his face as he took in the marble floors, crystal chandeliers, priceless artwork, and antique furniture. His expression remained neutral, but she could sense his discomfort. It's a lot, isn't it? She said quietly. It's beautiful, Elijah replied diplomatically, just very different from where I grew up. In the grand living room, Madeline stopped in front of a large portrait of her mother, Elizabeth Royce, who had died when Madeline was 12. In the painting, Elizabeth looked serene and elegant, her blonde hair and blue eyes so similar to Madeline's. Your mother? Elijah asked. Madeline nodded. She was beautiful, wasn't she? Like her daughter, Elijah said softly. She was kind too, Madeline said, her voice wistful. Daddy changed after she died. Became harder, more controlling. I think he was scared of losing me too. Elijah squeezed her hand. That explains a lot. Their moment was interrupted by the ringing of the doorbell. Martha appeared again, looking flustered. Miss Madeline, it's Mrs. Preston and Miss Caroline. Madeline sighed. News traveled fast in their social circle. No doubt Caroline's mother had heard about Madeline and Elijah from the hospital and had come to investigate herself. Show them in, Martha, Madeline said, straightening her shoulders. She turned to Elijah. Ready to meet more of my world? Elijah smiled reassuringly. As ready as I'll ever be. Victoria Preston swept into the room like a hurricane in designer clothes. At 55, she was still beautiful, her blonde hair expertly colored and styled, her face showing only the most discreet signs of cosmetic work. Caroline followed behind, shooting Madeline an apologetic look. Madeline, darling, Victoria exclaimed, air-kissing both of Madeline's cheeks. We just had to come check on you after all the excitement. How's your father? He's recovering well, Mrs. Preston, Madeline replied. Thank you for your concern. Victoria's eyes slid to Elijah, taking in his casual clothes and dark skin with poorly concealed disapproval. And who might this be? Madeline lifted her chin. This is Elijah Brooks. Elijah, this is Victoria Preston and her daughter Caroline, whom you met earlier. Mr. Brooks, Victoria acknowledged stiffly. Caroline mentioned meeting you at the hospital. Mrs. Presto N, Elijah replied politely. It's nice to meet you. An awkward silence followed. Victoria clearly didn't know what to make of Elijah's presence in the Royce mansion. Elijah is the EMT who saved Daddy's life, Madeline explained, though she knew Victoria had already heard the gossip. He performed CPR until the ambulance arrived. How fortunate he was there, Victoria said, her tone suggesting she found it anything but fortunate. Though I heard he wasn't actually invited to the banquet. No, he wasn't, Madeline admitted. "He was there to see me." Victoria's eyebrows shot up. "To see you? I don't understand." "Elijah and I have been dating for 3 months," Madeline said clearly. "We'd had an argument that night and he came to make things right." Victoria looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "Dating? But Madeline, what about Thomas? Your father mentioned you two might—" "There is no Thomas and me, Mrs. Preston," Madeline said firmly. "There never was. That was my father's idea, not mine." Victoria turned to Caroline, as if seeking confirmation that she was hearing correctly. Caroline just shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. "I see," Victoria said finally. She turned back to Madeline. "Darling, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of Elijah," Madeline replied, echoing what she'd told Caroline earlier. Victoria's perfectly made-up face tightened. "Very well. Madeline, I'm concerned about the choices you're making. Your father has just had a heart attack and now this unconventional relationship. People are talking." "Let them talk," Madeline said coolly. "You don't understand the damage this could do to your reputation, to the Royce name," Victoria insisted. "With all due respect, Mrs. Preston," Elijah said, his voice calm but firm, "Madeline's reputation isn't based on who she dates, but on who she is. And who she is a kind, brave, incredible woman who deserves to be happy." Victoria looked stunned that Elijah had dared to speak. Caroline, on the other hand, looked impressed. "Well," Victoria said stiffly, "I can see you've made up your mind, Madeline. I just hope you know what you're doing." "I do," Madeline assured her. "For the first time in my life, I really do." After an uncomfortable cup of tea, during which Victoria made pointed remarks about suitable matches and family traditions, the Prestons finally left. As soon as the door closed behind them, Madeline collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. "That was awful," she groaned. "You handled it beautifully," Elijah said, sitting beside her. "Victoria Preston doesn't intimidate you." "She intimidates everyone," Madeline countered. "She's the unofficial queen of Charleston society. If she decides to turn against me, others will follow." "Does that worry you?" Elijah asked carefully. Madeline considered the question. A week ago, the thought of being ostracized by Charleston society would have terrified her. Now it seemed almost trivial compared to the thought of losing Elijah. "No," she said honestly, "it doesn't. Not anymore." Elijah smiled, relief evident in his eyes. "Good." He hesitated. "I should probably go. I've got a shift early tomorrow morning." Madeline felt a pang of disappointment. "You could stay," she offered. "We have plenty of guest rooms." Elijah shook his head. "Not yet. It's too soon. Your father needs time to adjust to the idea of us dating. Finding out I spent the night under his roof, even in a guest room, might push him too far." Madeline knew he was right, but she hated to see him go. "Will you come back tomorrow, after your shift?" "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," Elijah promised, kissing her softly. After Elijah left, Madeline wandered through the big house, feeling strangely out of place. This had been her home all her life, but suddenly it felt like a museum, beautiful but cold, preserving a way of life that no longer felt like hers. She went to her father's study, a room she rarely entered. It was Harold's domain, filled with leather-bound books, hunting trophies, and family photographs. On the desk was a silver-framed picture of her mother, taken shortly before her death. Beside it was a photo of Madeline at her debutante ball, looking like a princess in her white gown. She picked up the debutante photo, studying her younger self. She'd been so eager to please then, so careful to follow every rule, meet every expectation. When had that changed? When had she started wanting more? The answer came easily. When she met Elijah. He had shown her a different way of living, one based on genuine connection rather than social obligation. With him, she was just Madeline, not Harold Royce's daughter or Charleston's perfect Southern belle. Putting the photo down, Madeline noticed a leather portfolio tucked beneath some papers. Curious, she opened it. Inside were documents about Royce Industries, financial reports, board meeting minutes, strategic plans. things her father had never shared with her. She began to read, hungry for knowledge about the business that bore her name. For hours she pored over the documents, absorbing information about her father's empire. There was so much she hadn't known, so much her father had kept from her. One document in particular caught her eye, a succession plan for Royce Industries. It named Robert Simmons as interim CEO in the event of Harold's incapacity, with a transition to Thomas Preston once he completed law school and gained suitable experience. Thomas Preston, not Madeleine Royce. Her father had never even considered her as a potential successor to the business he'd built. The realization stung, but it also ignited something in Madeleine, a determination to prove herself, to show her father and everyone else that she was more than just a pretty face, more than just a society daughter. The next morning, Madeleine drove to the hospital early. She found her father sitting up in bed, looking stronger. "You're here early," Harold commented, pleased despite himself. "I had trouble sleeping," Madeleine admitted. "Daddy, I found your succession plan for Royce Industry S." Harold's expression closed off. "You were snooping in my office?" "I was trying to understand the business better," Madeleine corrected. "Why didn't you ever consider me to take over Royce Industries?" Harold sighed. "Madeleine, the business world is harsh, cutthroat. I wanted to protect you from that." "By shutting me out completely," Madeleine challenged. "By grooming Thomas Preston to take over the company that bears my name. Thomas has the education and the experience. Because you gave him opportunities you never gave me," Madeleine interrupted. "I have a business degree too, Daddy. From Vanderbilt, remember? But you never once asked me if I wanted to be part of Royce Industries." Harold looked surprised. "I didn't think you were interested." "You never asked," Madeleine repeated. "You just assumed I'd be content with charity committees and garden parties while the men handled the real business." Harold D. was silent for a moment, studying his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. "You really want to be involved in the business?" "Yes," Madeleine said firmly. "I do. It's my legacy too, Daddy. My name. My heritage." Harold nodded slowly. "All right. When I get out of here, we'll talk about finding a role for you at Royce Industries." It wasn't a promise of succession, but it was a start. Madeleine smiled. "Thank you, Daddy." "This doesn't mean I've changed my mind about Brooks," Harold warned. "I know," Madeleine said, "but maybe it means you're starting to see me as an adult, capable of making my own decisions." "Maybe," Harold conceded grudgingly. They talked for a while longer about the business, Harold explaining some of the documents Madeleine had read. For the first time, he spoke to her as a potential colleague rather than a child to be protected. It was a subtle shift, but a significant one. As Mardi Line was leaving, Harold called her back. "Madeleine, there's a charity banquet next weekend at the Charleston Golf Club. I'll still be recovering, but I'd like you to go and represent the family." Madeleine nodded. "Of course." "Brooks can accompany you," Harold added, the words clearly difficult for him to say. "If you wish." Madeleine's heart leapt. It wasn't approval, but it was acknowledgement. Progress. "Thank you, Daddy. That means a lot to me." "Don't make too much of it," Harold said gruffly. "I'm just trying to adapt." "That's all I'm asking for," Madeleine assured him. When she called Elijah to tell him about the invitation, he was surprised but pleased. "Your father suggested this?" "He did," Madeleine confirmed. "It's a small step, but it's something." "It's huge," Elijah corrected. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Being seen with me at a society event?" "I've never been more ready for anything, G," Madeleine said confidently. The week passed in a whirlwind. Madeleine divided her time between visiting her father in the hospital, learning more about Royce Industries, and spending evenings with Elijah. Each day she felt more certain of her choices, more comfortable in her new identity as a woman who made her own decisions. The night of the charity banquet arrived. Madeleine chose a simple but elegant emerald green gown that complemented her blonde hair and fair skin. When Elijah arrived to pick her up, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, her breath caught. He looked devastatingly handsome. "You look beautiful," he said, echoing her thoughts. "So do you," she replied, smiling. Ready to face the lion's den? Elijah offered his arm. With you by my side? Absolutely. The Charleston Golf Club was one of the most exclusive venues in the city, a place where generations of the same families had gathered for social events. As Elijah's car pulled up to the entrance, Madeline could see the valet's surprise at seeing her with a black man. They walked into the banquet hall together, Madeline's hand firmly in Elijah's. Conversation faltered as heads turned to stare. Madeline recognized the shocked faces of people she'd known all her life, country club members, her father's friends, fellow debutantes from her season. Everyone's staring, Elijah murmured. Let them, Madeline replied, head high. They'll get used to it. Victoria Preston, who was chairing the event, approached them with a fixed smile. Madeline, darling, and Mr. Brooks, how unexpected. My father sends his regrets that he couldn't attend, Madeline said smoothly. He asked me to represent the Royce family tonight. Of course, Victoria said, her smile never reaching her eyes. You're seated at table 3, with the Harrisons and the Caldwells. As they made their way to their table, whispers followed them. Madeline held her head high, refusing to be cowed by the stares and murmurs. Richard Harrison, a longtime friend of Harold's, stood as they approached. Madeline, lovely to see you. How's your father doing? Much better, thank you, Mr. Harrison. He should be home by the end of the week. Wonderful news, Richard said, his eyes flickering curiously to Elijah. This is Elijah Brooks, Madeline introduced. Elijah, this is Richard Harrison, my father's friend and business partner. Mr. Brooks, Richard acknowledged, shaking Elijah's hand. I believe I've heard about you. You're the young man who saved Harold's life. I just happened to be there at the right time, Elijah said modestly. Quite a coincidence, Richard remarked, his tone suggesting he knew it was no coincidence at all. The evening progressed with strained politeness. Own people were openly curious about Elijah, asking him about his work as an EMT. Others were coolly civil, addressing all their comments to Madeline and ignoring Elijah completely. During dinner, Madeline excused herself to visit the ladies' room. As she was washing her hands, Victoria Preston entered, followed by 2 other society matrons. Madeline, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false concern. Darling, what are you thinking bringing that man here? People are talking. Good, Madeline replied calmly. Let them talk. But your father knows I'm here with Elijah, Madeline cut her off. In fact, he suggested it. Victoria looked shocked. Harold approved of this. He's trying, Madeline said simply, which is more than I can say for some people. She left the ladies' room with her head held high, ignoring the shocked faces of Victoria and her friends. When she returned to the table, Elijah was deep in conversation with Richard Harrison about emergency medical procedures. Your young man is quite knowledgeable, Richard commented to Madeline as she sat down. He was just explaining how he knew exactly what to do for your father. Madeline smiled, pride swelling in her chest. Elijah is the best at what he does. That's why he's been promoted to supervisor of emergency services at St. Luke's. Elijah looked at her in surprise. This was news to him. My father called the hospital administrator yesterday, Madeline explained. He said if they were going to make staff changes in the emergency department, they should start by recognizing excellence. Elijah's smile was worth every stare, every whisper, every moment of discomfort they'd endured that evening. Your father did that. He did, Madeline confirmed. He's trying, Elijah, in his own way. After dinner came dancing. Madeline held her breath, wondering if anyone would object to her and Elijah taking the floor together. But as they moved into each other's arms, the other couples simply made space for them, some watching curiously, others deliberately looking away. You're brave, Madeline Royce, Elijah murmured as they swayed to the music. Not brave, she corrected, just in love. As the evening drew to a close, Madeline felt a curious sense of victory. They had faced Charleston society toge there, and while not everyone had accepted them, they had survived. More than survived. They had made a statement. Driving home, Elijah was quiet, thoughtful. What are you thinking? Madeline asked. I'm thinking about how much has changed in a week, he replied. A week ago, you wouldn't even introduce me to your father. Tonight, we danced together at the Charleston Golf Club. A lot can change in a week, Madeline agreed. A heart attack, a promotion, a daughter standing up to her father. Are you happy, Elijah asked suddenly, with how things are changing? Madeline didn't hesitate. Happier than I've ever been. When they arrived at the Royce estate, Elijah walked her to the door. Under the porch light, he took both her hands in his. Madeline Royce, I love you, he said solemnly. I loved you when you were afraid to be seen with me, and I love you even more now that you're brave enough to face the world at my side. Tears pricked Madeline's eyes. I love you too, Elijah. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, he promised, kissing her softly. As Madeline watched him drive away, she felt a peace she'd never known before. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Her father was trying, but he hadn't fully accepted Elijah yet. Charleston society was still whispering, still judging. But for the first time in her life, Madeline Royce knew exactly who she was, and what she wanted, and she wasn't afraid to fight for it. The day Harold Royce was scheduled to come home from the hospital, Madeline woke early, filled with nervous energy. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of changes in her relationship with Elijah, in her involvement with Royce Industries, and most unexpectedly, in her father's attitude. Harold had kept his word about finding a place for Madeline in the family business. She had spent several days at Royce Industries headquarters, meeting with department heads, reviewing reports, and learning the ins and outs of the company that bore her name. To her surprise, she found she had a natural aptitude for business, something she'd never had the opportunity to discover before. As for Elijah, his promotion to supervisor had been announced officially. The same hospital staff who had once whispered about him and Madeline now looked at him with new respect. H.E. took the changes in stride, as he did everything with quiet confidence and humility. Now, as Madeline prepared for her father's homecoming, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Harold had made small steps toward accepting her relationship with Elijah, but he was still Harold Royce, stubborn, traditional, and used to getting his way. At 10 o'clock, Madeline drove to the hospital for the last time. She found her father dressed in his own sea clothes again, looking impatient as he signed discharge papers. Finally, he grumbled when he saw her. I thought they'd never let me out of here. Madeline smiled. If her father was complaining, he was definitely feeling better. Ready to go home? More than ready, Harold confirmed. How are things at the office? Good, Madeline replied, helping him gather his belongings. I reviewed the Westfield proposal like you asked. I think we should move forward with it. Harold looked pleased. Robert agrees with you. He says you've taken to the business like a duck to water. Madeline felt a warm glow at the praise. I've enjoyed it more than I expected. As they walked slowly to the exit, Harold leaning on a cane, he asked casually, And how is Mr. Brooks? Adjusting to his new position? Madeline tried not to show her surprise at her father's question. He's doing well. The staff respects him. Good, Harold said gruffly. A man in a leadership position needs respect. It was the closest thing to approval Harold had expressed regarding Elijah. Madeline decided to push her luck. I was hoping Elijah could join us for dinner tonight, she said, to celebrate your homecoming. Harold was quiet for a moment. That would be acceptable, he said finally. Madeline hid her smile. Acceptable was a far cry from the outright rejection he would have given 2 weeks ago. At the Royce estate, the staff had prepared for Harold's return. Fresh flowers filled the house. His favorite meals were planned, and his bedroom had been rearranged to make his recovery more comfortable. Martha fussed over him like a mother hen as he settled into his armchair in the living room. Everything looks wonderful, Martha, thank you, Madeline said. And can you please set an extra place for dinner? Elijah will be joining us. Martha's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Of course, Miss Madeline. Left alone with her father, Madeline sat across from him, noticing how the heart attack had aged him. There were new lines on his face, and his hair seemed more silver than before. How does it feel to be home? She asked. Like I never left, Harold replied, looking around the familiar room. Though some things have certainly changed. Madeline knew he wasn't talking about the furniture. Changi isn't always bad, Daddy. Harold met her gaze. No, I suppose it isn't. Speaking of change, there's something I want to discuss with you. What is it? Madeline asked, curious about his serious tone. Royce Industries, Harold began. I've been thinking about the future. My heart attack was a wake-up call, Madeline. I won't be around forever. Daddy, don't talk like that, Madeline protested. It's just reality, Harold said practically. And reality is something we need to face. I've watched you these past 2 weeks taking an interest in the business, showing aptitude I never gave you credit for. Madeline held her breath, hardly daring to hope where this conversation was leading. I've decided to revise the succession plan, Harold continued. Instead of naming Robert as interim CEO, I'm naming you. Madeline stared at her father in shock. Me? But I've only been involved for 2 weeks. You're a quick learner, Harold said, and you have something Robert doesn't. The Royce name and spirit. The company should stay in the family. What about Thomas Preston? Madeline couldn't help asking. Harold waved a dismissive hand. Thomas will do fine at his father's firm. Royce Industries belongs to the Royces. Tears pricked Madeline's eyes. After a lifetime of being underestimated by her father, this vote of confidence meant everything. Thank you, Daddy. I won't let you down. See that you don't, Harold said gruffly, but there was pride in his eyes. Now, tell me more about this Westfield proposal. Why do you think we should move forward? For the next hour, they discussed business, Harold listening with genuine interest as Madeline outlined her thoughts on various projects. It was a new dynamic between them, father and daughter, mentor and protege, equals in a way they had never been before. Late that afternoon, as Madeline was getting ready for dinner, her phone rang. It was Elijah. How's your father settling in? He asked. Well, Madeline replied, smiling at the sound of his voice. And he's full of surprises. He's named me as his successor at Royce Industries. Madeline, that's wonderful, Elijah exclaimed. I'm so proud of you. I can hardly believe it myself, she admitted. After years of thinking he saw me as nothing but a pretty ornament, it turns out he believes in me after all. I always believed in you, Elijah reminded her, from the first day we met. I know, Madeline said softly. That's one of the reasons I love you. One of many reasons, I hope, Elijah teased. Too many to count, Madeline assured him. Are you still coming for dinner? Tonight. Wouldn't miss it, Elijah promised, though I admit I'm a little nervous about dining with your father in his own home. Don't be, Madeline said. He's making an effort, Elijah. He asked about you today, voluntarily. Progress indeed, Elijah remarked. I'll see you soon. When Elijah arrived for dinner, Madeline met him at the door. He looked handsome in a dark blue suit, his expression a mixture of determination and nervousness. You look beautiful, he said, taking in her simple black dress. So do you, she replied, reaching up to straighten his tie. Ready for this? As I'll ever be, Elijah said with a small smile. They found Harold in the formal dining room, already seated at the head of the long mahogany table. He rose as they entered, leaning on his cane. Mr. Brooks, he greeted, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Royce, Elijah replied, shaking Harold's hand firmly. It's good to see you up and about. Getting stronger every day, Harold said, gesturing for them to sit. I understand congratulations are in order for your promotion. Leadership is a responsibility, not just an honor, Harold observed, as Martha served the first course. But I'm sure you understand to hat. I do, Elijah agreed. My team's performance reflects on me. Their successes and failures are ultimately my responsibility. Harold nodded approvingly. Exactly right. The same principle applies in business, as Madeline is learning. The conversation flowed more easily than Madeline had dared to hope. Harold asked Elijah about his background, his education, his family. Elijah answered honestly, speaking of his working-class upbringing in North Charleston. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman, Harold commented. She is, Elijah agreed. She worked 2 jobs to make sure I had opportunities she never had. Something flickered in Harold's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of values he himself held dear. Wise words, H.E. acknowledged. As dessert was served, Harold turned the conversation to a topic Madeline hadn't expected. "Mr. Brooks, my daughter tells me you were concerned about how people might treat her because of your relationship." Elijah set down his fork, meeting Harold's gaze steadily. "Yes, sir, I was. Still am, to some extent." "Because you're black and she's white," Harold said bluntly. "Yes," Elijah replied, equally direct. "Society has come a long way, but prejudice still exists. I never want Madeline to suffer because of loving me." Harold was quiet for a moment. "When my Elizabeth was alive, she used to tell me I was too concerned with what other people thought. 'Harold,' she'd say, 'at the end of your life, will you care more about being right or being happy?'" Madeline stared at her father in surprise. He rarely spoke of her mother. "It's taken me a long time to understand what she meant," Harold continued. "Too long, perhaps, but my heart attack has made some things clearer." He looked at Madeline, then at Elijah. "Life is short. Happiness should not be sacrificed for appearance or tradition." "Daddy?" Madeline whispered, tears in her eyes. Harold cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional moment. "Don't misunderstand me. I still have concerns about your relationship, but they're no longer about what people will think. They're about the challenges you will face. Challenges that have nothing to do with color and everything to do with building a life together when you come from different worlds." "We're aware of those challenges, Mr. Royce," Elijah said, "but we believe what we have is worth fighting for." Harold nodded slowly. "As it should be." He raised his water glass. "To facing challenges together." Madeline and Elijah raised their glasses, exchanging shocked but happy glances. It wasn't a blessing exactly, but it was a significant step toward acceptance. After dinner, Harold excused himself, claiming fatigue. As he left the dining room, he paused beside Elijah's chair. "Mr. Brooks," he said quietly, "you saved my life that night. I haven't properly thanked you for that." "No thanks necessary, sir," Elijah replied. "I was just doing my job." "No," Harold shook his head. "You were doing more than your job. You came back for my daughter even after she hurt you, and then you saved me, knowing who I was and what I might think of you. That takes character." With that, Harold left, leaving Madeline and Elijah alone in the grand dining room. "Did that really just happen?" Elijah asked once Harold was out of earshot. "I think it did," Madeline replied, smiling through tears. "He's trying, Elijah, really trying." "Your father is a proud man," Elijah observed. "This couldn't have been easy for him." "No," Madeline agreed, "but that makes it mean even more." Later that evening, as they sat in the garden watching the stars, Elijah took Madeline's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the future. Our future." Madeline's heart skipped. "What about it?" "I love you, Madeline Royce," Elijah said simply. "These past 2 weeks have been crazy and wonderful and challenging, but through it all, one thing has remained constant: how I feel about you." "I feel the same way," Madeline assured him. "I know it's soon," Elijah continued. "Only 3 months, and there's still so much we need to figure out. Your new role at Royce Industries, my promotion, your father's recovery." "But," Madeline prompted, sensing there was more. "But I know what I want," Elijah said, his dark eyes serious in the moonlight. "Who I want. And I don't need more time to be sure of that." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a SM All velvet box. Madeline's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "It's not as grand as what you're used to," Elijah said apologetically. "But it was my grandmother's. My mother gave it to me after the first time I told her about you." "It's beautiful," Madeline whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Madeline Royce," Elijah said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" "Not right away. We can have a long engagement, give your father more time to adjust, give ourselves time to build our life together. But I want to know that someday you'll be my wife." "Yes," Madeline said without hesitation. "Yes, Elijah, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Madeline felt a sense of rightness, of completion. 3 months ago, she never could have imagined this moment. She had been living a life prescribed by others, following a path laid out by her father and society. Then came that night, the night that changed everything. The night Elijah had saved her father's life, and in doing so, set them all on a new path. "What are you thinking?" Elijah asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about how much has changed," Madeline replied. "How much I've changed. 3 months ago I was afraid to introduce you to my father. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of standing up for what I wanted. And now," Elijah prompted. "Now I know what matters," Madeline said, touching the ring on her finger. "Love, truth, courage." She leaned in and kissed him softly. "You taught me that, Elijah." "We taught each other," he corrected. "I learned from you too, you know, about patience, about forgiveness, about hoping for change, even when it seems impossible." From inside the house came the sound of a telephone ringing. A moment later, Martha Appiah read at the garden door. "Miss Madeline," she called. "There's a call for you. It's Mrs. Preston." Madeline sighed. News traveled fast in Charleston. "Tell her I'll call her back tomorrow, Martha." "Yes, miss," Martha replied, her eyes catching the sparkle of the ring on Madeline's finger. She smiled slightly before retreating back into the house. "Victoria Preston will have a fit when she hears we're engaged," Madeline said with a small laugh. "Are you ready for that?" Elijah asked. "For the reactions, the gossip, the questions?" "I'm ready for anything," Madeline said confidently, "as long as we're together." The following Saturday, another charity banquet was held at the Charleston Golf Club. This one was in honor of Harold Royce's recovery and his years of philanthropic work in the community. Harold had insisted on attending, despite his doctor's concerns about him doing too much too soon. "It's my party," he'd said stubbornly. "I'll be there if I have to crawl." He didn't have to crawl, but he did lean heavily on his cane as he entered the banquet hall, Madeline on one arm, Elijah following close behind. The room fell silent as the trio appeared, all eyes turning to them. Victoria Preston rushed forward, her society smile firmly in place. "Harold, we're so delighted you could make it. You look wonderful." "Thank you, Victoria," Harold replied cordially. "May I present my daughter Madeline, whom you know, and her fiancé, Elijah Brooks." The word fiancé sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Victoria's smile froze on her face. "Fiancé?" she repeated weakly. "My goodness, that's sudden." "When you know," Harold said, surprising everyone even further with his support. "Now, where are we seated? I'm not supposed to stand for too long." As they made their way to the head table, whispers and St. Aries followed them. Madeline held her head high, the ring glittering on her finger, Elijah steady beside her. When they were seated, Harold tapped his water glass with a spoon, calling for attention. The room quieted as he struggled to his feet, waving away Madeline's concerned hand. "Friends, colleagues, members of the Charleston community," Harold began. "Thank you for this honor. As many of you know, 2 weeks ago I suffered a severe heart attack during a banquet at my home. The doctors tell me I should have died that night," the crowd murmured sympathetically. "But I didn't die," Harold continued, "because a young man happened to be there. A young man who knew exactly what to do, who acted quickly and without hesitation. That young man is Elijah Brooks." All eyes turned to Elijah, who sat straight back beside Madeline, his expression composed. "Mr. Brooks saved my life," Harold stated plainly. "And in doing so, he gave me a second chance. A chance to reassess what truly matters. A chance to see things and people more clearly." Harold paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Many of you have known me for decades. You know I'm a traditional man. Not always quick to embrace change." There were a few knowing chuckles from the audience, but near-death experiences have a way of shifting perspectives. He looked at Madeline, then at Elijah. "My daughter has chosen this man to share her life with, and while it may not be the choice I would have made for her, I've come to see that it's the right choice for her. Mr. Brooks is a man of integrity, courage and kindness, qualities that matter far more than background or bank account. Madeline felt tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Elijah sat very still, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "So tonight," Harold concluded, "as you honor me, I ask you to join me in honoring them, in wishing them happiness, in accepting that the world is changing and perhaps it's time for all of us to change with it." He raised his glass. "To Madeline and Elijah, may your life together be long and joyful." The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then one by one people began to rise, glasses in hand. Richard Harrison first, then others, friends, business associates, community leaders. Even Victoria Preston, though her smile remained strained. "To Madeline and Elijah," the crowd echoed. As Harold sat down, Madeline leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. Harold patted her hand awkwardly. "I meant what I said. He's a good man, your Elijah. I was just too stubborn to see it." "It takes a big man to change his mind," Elijah said, offering his hand to Harold across Madeline. Harold shook it firmly. "It takes a bigger man to forgive someone who was wrong." Later, as the dancing began, Madeline and Elijah took to the floor, moving together in perfect rhythm. This time there were no shocked stares, no deliberate turning away. Harold's speech had set the tone for the evening, acceptance, if not wholehearted approval. "Your father surprised me tonight," Elijah admitted as they danced. "I never expected such a public endorsement." "He surprised me too," Madeline said, "but I think he meant every word." "So what happens now?" Elijah asked. "You're the heir to Royce Industries. I'm an emergency services supervisor at St. Luke's. We come from different worlds, Madeline." "Not anymore," Madeline corrected. "We're building our own world now. Together." As the music swelled around them, Madeline thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The secret meetings, the painful words, the night that changed everything. All of it had led here, to an engagement ring on her finger, her father's blessing, and Elijah's arms around her. The road ahead wouldn't be perfectly smooth. There would still be those who disapproved, challenges to face, differences to navigate. But they would face it all together, with truth and courage and love. That night, the night of her father's heart attack, the night Elijah had saved his life, had indeed changed everything. It had changed her father, giving him a second chance at life and a new perspective. It had changed Madeline, freeing her to become the woman she was meant to be, and it had changed their world, opening doors that had once seemed permanently closed. As the music ended, Elijah pulled Madeline close. "I love you, Madeline Royce," he whispered against her hair. "And I love you, Elijah Brooks," she replied. "Always." Across the room, Harold Royce watched his daughter and her fiancé, a mixture of emotions on his face. Pride in the strong, independent woman Madeline had become, respect for the man who had saved his life and won his daughter's heart, and perhaps a touch of wistfulness for the traditions and certainties of the past. But mostly, there was acceptance. The world was changing. His daughter was changing. And finally, at long last, so was he. That night had changed everything. And somehow, against all odds, it had changed things for the better. The end.